Hello guys, welcome back to our channel. So today we're going to be talking about types of security interests in Nigeria. So typically when lenders give out monies to borrowers, they would typically want to take security over different types of assets to secure the facilities they've given out to the borrowers. In case there are instances where the borrowers are unable to pay, so they can go after those collateral, the security, to realize the monies they've given out to the borrower. So we are just going to go through some of the types of security interests typically provided as security to lenders in Nigerian financings. So I think the first to start with will be bank accounts, right? One of the most common security interest taken over bank accounts is a charge, and this can either be fixed or a floating charge, right? For a fixed charge, the security or the secured party we have control over the charged accounts, and the charger is prevented from dealing with the charged accounts without the prior consent of the chargee. But for floating charge, as you would already know, the charger retains control of the charged account until the charge crystallizes, right, into a fixed charge following the occurrence of certain events which would have already been documented prior and contained in the security document. Another type of security interest are shares. Companies, the shares held by entities in a company. So security can be taken in the shares of a company incorporated in Nigeria by way of a share mortgage or maybe a share charge, deed of share charge, right? Shares in companies are issued in registered form and not in bearer form, that is in Nigeria under the applicable laws, the Companies and Allied Matters Act. So the shares are issued in registered form and not in bearer form. What that essentially means is that the fact that you are holding this share certificate does not automatically give you an entitlement to the shares. What gives you an entitlement to the shares is the registration of your interest, right? When you are entered into the register of members as a shareholder. So that means it's in registered form and not in bearer form. So for that reason, a pledge of shares by mere delivery of share certificates to the secured party would not be an effective means of creating security, as share certificates, like I earlier mentioned, are merely evidence of title and not an instrument conferring title. Another very common security interest that can be taken are lands, right? You can take security interest over land. So, that's usually granted by way of a legal or an equitable mortgage. Then you can also take security over contractual rights, right? Rights arising under a contract or an agreement are usually assigned by way of security to a secured party, with a provision for reassignment to the assignor after the secured obligations have been discharged, right? Depending on the terms of the contract or agreement, an assignment might be subject to prior approval of the counterparty. So let's say a lender lends monies to borrowers and the borrower have some contract with third parties. The rights of the borrowers can be assigned to the lenders as security, right? So once the obligations or the secured obligations have been discharged, then there will be a reassignment. So it's called an assignment by way of security, meaning once there is the fulfillment or the discharge of the secured obligations, those contractual rights will be reassigned, okay, to back to the borrower. So now another and again, just also important to mention that to perfect the assignment, you need to notify the other parties, right? Then again, you can also take you can also take security over insurance proceeds. But I think it's very important to speak a bit on this, right? So insurance proceeds are usually assigned by way of security to a secured party, with a provision, like I mentioned earlier, for contractual rights, with a provision for reassignment to the assignor after the secured obligations have been fully discharged. It's important to actually note that the Central Bank of Nigeria prohibits a Nigerian resident, whether you're a natural person or a corporate entity registered with the CAC, the CBN prohibits a Nigerian resident from assigning Nigerian residents annuities and insurance policies to non-residents. So if a non-resident, for example, a non-resident lender proposes to take security over the insurance policies of a resident entity, that lender would either have to do a couple of things. One, and these are ways to go around it, it's either the non-resident lender appoints a local security agent to which the insurance proceeds are assigned on the lender's behalf, or you require the borrower to establish an insurance proceeds account into which all proceeds of insurance are paid, and then take security over that account. So that's a way to go around it. Then security can actually be taken also over authorizations and licenses. Rights arising under authorizations and licenses can be assigned by way of security to a third party. However, it's important to note that since authorizations and licenses are considered personal to the beneficiary of those licenses and authorizations, an assignment or transfer of the beneficiaries or license holders' interest to a third party as security requires the issuing authority's license. So, for example, if you want to, for let's say the telecommunication sector, you want to assign by way of security your license to operate as a telecoms company. Of course, you need to get the prior approval of the NCC. And that also applies to oil and gas companies. You have to also get the approval of the Minister of Petroleum Resources in Nigeria. So I think that's been noted. Then also for intellectual property, security can be taken over intellectual property. Security over trademarks, copyrights, designs, patents are typically granted by way of a fixed charge or an assignment by way of security. So security can also actually be taken over intellectual property by way of a mortgage or a floating charge. You can also take security over personal and tangible assets. So taking security over plants, machineries, your bicycle, your car, your television set, movable assets, personal properties, and all of that. For movable assets, there's the Secured Transaction in Movable Assets Act, under which the collateral registry has been created on domiciled under the authority of the central bank. So where security is taking over movable asset chattels, so those your security interests can be registered at the collateral registry. But that's a conversation we'll have in another discussion, right? So these are typical security interests that can be taken, different categories of assets that are typically provided as security to lenders in Nigeria. But I think before I round up, we should also just quickly mention the issue of whether security can be taken over future assets. All the things we talked about are issues around what the borrower currently has, which it can give as security for the facilities or the loans to be provided by the lender. But what about future assets? Can security be granted over future assets? The simple answer is that yes, security can be granted over future assets, either by way of a floating charge over a specified category of assets or by way of a fixed charge, right? You wonder how you can create a fixed charge over what you don't own yet or what is not known yet. But it can be created by way of a fixed charge where the future assets in question are clearly identifiable. For the fixed charge, the security interest attaches to future assets as soon as the assets are acquired, but the security interest is deemed created on the security instrument's execution date. I think I just thought to mention that. So in the next issue, we're going to be talking about registration of security interest and restrictions that are in place when taking security over certain assets. I believe this has been very helpful, and if it has, please drop your comments, please like the video, and also don't forget to subscribe and turn on your notification so that when we release new videos and new lectures, you will know by the notification. Thank you very much. Have a wonderful day.